only 16 and still at school, but she's been involved in activism for many years, attending her first protest against the illegal Iraq War at only 6 years old. The co-founder of the Youth Movement for Independence Generation Yes. Please put your hands together for Saffron Dickson.
I feel like I should have a podium because I'm 5'3" and I can't see anybody, but then I look like a bit of an evangelical preacher, and I don't think that's a good look that would suit me. But there's loads of statistics flying about, but I don't come up and talk about statistics, but because for me, we've already had amazing statistics from Business for Scotland, but it's important to remember behind every single social graph, pie chart and number that you see is a person. They're not numbers, they're people. I grew up in an area that is extremely divided. It is an absolutely brilliant representation of what's wrong with the UK and why it's not okay. We were overlooked as a community because on one half we have some of the richest people in Glasgow, and on the other half we have some of the poorest. And I would call myself fortunate because I grew up in a working class family with a dad who made enough money for me to never starve, for me to go to school, and me for always to have trainers that fit me. So I would consider myself lucky. But I grew up in terrible social housing where I saw the effects of welfare cuts, and growing up in a community like that and just not understanding why somebody would want to base their policies on such little humanity. It didn't make any sense to me. I was surrounded by people with chronic illness because of how terrible the housing was, because a government that we didn't vote for sold off our housing and didn't replenish it. Social housing isn't something to escape from, it isn't something that you should only be in for a while and then move on to bigger and better things. Social housing is there for the people, and the people have been let down by governments they didn't even vote for, by policies that they didn't want. I've lived in a community where I have seen people being so affected that they can't eat. I've had friends that can't make it to school because they don't have any money to buy their lunches. So do they go to school and starve, or do they stay in the house where they have limited food in their cupboards? And that's the problem with the UK. It's only okay if you're sitting in a house where you've got enough food and where you've got dry walls, but the reality is that 25% of our children in Scotland don't grow up with that. 25% of our children in Scotland grow up not being able to afford to eat, their families not being able to afford to heat, the choice between food and mould on their walls. And for me, Scotland being the 14th wealthiest country in the world, that doesn't mean anything to me unless we redistribute that wealth. And as a socialist, that's one of the reasons why I got so involved in the independence campaign, because for me, I didn't care about statistics, I cared about my pals living in the corridor that were starving. I cared about the people, the families that I saw breaking down because there wasn't any jobs in Scotland. I cared about the people, and it's time that the people take that back. Westminster has never represented any policies, any politics, or even my biological anatomy. It's never represented me, and it doesn't represent Scotland. Because Scottish people want humanity. And whether you're a no voter or a yes voter, you very often find that people identify as a socialist either way. It's a big thing in Scotland, they just differ in the routes that we think we can take to realise socialism in Scotland. And the social justice is such a big problem, and it's overlooked by the pound and currency. I could be trading jam jars, and if we didn't have food banks on my corner of the street, I would be happy. If I could buy bread and I could buy milk, and I saw my neighbours being able to buy bread and milk, then I would be happy. It's not about that. Of course, economy comes into everything, because if you don't have money, then you can't buy anything, you can't fund anything. But it's not about oil. Of course oil runs out. Of course, at some point in the future, salmon will probably stop swimming in the sea. But tourism will never leave because as much as David Cameron wants it to, mountains won't move and people don't leave. Scotland can be successful. Scotland is successful, and it is as successful as it can be in areas with a limited amount of money that we are granted as a present every year. When we get that little bit of money, we get to decide what we spend it on. Oh, yippee. We don't get all of our funds, but you know, Westminster are really good to us because they've given us that little bit of money back. But with that little bit of money becomes a union that we're tied to, that dragged us into illegal wars. I have never grown up knowing old Labour. I grew up knowing my dad that was heartbroken by Labour. My whole life I have lived in a country that has dragged us into war, killing women, children and men for oil. I have lived my whole life living in a country where we never got a government where we voted for. I'm 60 years old, so I won't be able to vote in 2015 if we don't get independence, but what's the point if my voice isn't heard anyway? If we get independence, people like me who are 16, 17, 18, it means that every single election that they ever vote in for their whole lives, they will be represented. They will always get the government that they vote for, and that's something that you guys will never be able to experience. Because you've lived under a government that lied to you, that took your resources from you, and that plundered your children into poverty. But this is a unique opportunity to create a new Scotland, and it's not about the SNP, it's not about the Green Party or Labour or anything like that, it's about the people. Because at the end of the day, it will be you that's voting for the policies. You can have any policies you want, because in a new independent Scotland, we can do anything that we want. Lib Dems, no spine, no backbone. Went against everything that they said they were for. They don't represent me. And I don't think that they would represent a lot of people here, whether you're a no or a yes, or an undecided, which I hope will be yes by the end of the night, but that's not as late. The Tories. I try to talk about the Tories sometimes, but then I just get really emotional, and then I cry, because like it's the Tories and they like ruin people's lives with policies that Scottish MPs voted against, such as the bedroom tax and welfare reform. Things like universal credits are going to plunder even more people into poverty. Things like the bedroom tax that we had to cover for, that took away resources from our education and NHS and things like that. And most people in this room didn't grow up with a Scottish parliament. But I'm the first generation that grew up with the devolved pillars. And let me tell you something, it's not devolved. It's a rubber stamp. Because in P6 and P7, I didn't even get taught maths. Because there was so little in our budget that our head teacher had to be our maths teacher. And if anybody here is a teacher, you'll know how busy the head boss is. So we're completely forgotten about all the time. And it stings for my generation that I speak about, because this is my future and I've seen the way my mum and dad were affected. I come from a working class family, and policies usually don't reflect what I want in Westminster, but then again, neither does their sex or their accent or anything, or their background or anything I want. I grew up seeing how that affected my family, and I don't want it to affect my children like it affected me. I don't want my children to grow up in a country where they have to see pictures of drones raining down on families. I don't want my children to grow up in a political union that stands staunchly behind Israel, that's willingly being funded and killing children, women and men, starving them on a calorie basis. But they say the defence is that the Israeli forces tell them to leave. Where are they meant to run? Do you want them to swim to another country? Because you closed off their borders. We don't have the ability to make a difference and things like that, and you know, extra powers are great, but we're never going to have powers over foreign policy and welfare. Why have extra powers when you can have every power and you can have the ability to change people's lives? That's what this is. This is the opportunity to change lives, to mould a country. The UK isn't okay. The UK is bloody terrible. It's awful. I don't think a country is okay where elderly people have to choose between eating and heating. I don't think a country is okay when we have food banks because our welfare system is so terrible and so inhumane that people are starving and being punished because they can't find work in an economy that has been in a triple recession that we could have bailed ourselves out of, but we couldn't because we were tied to one of the most unequal political unions the world has ever seen. We can't bail ourselves out of situations like that. I don't want people to grow up in the same country that I've grown up in. I'm 16 years old and I'm already had enough. I can't imagine what you lot feel like. I mean, some people would deem me an absolute crazy lefty hippie, but I'm a people person. I look at how it affects people. And the UK is only okay if you have a roof over your head. Like thousands and thousands and thousands of people in Scotland don't. And by the way, poverty doesn't just exist if you don't have a roof over your head. Because my roof over my head, when I grew up, had so much mould and so much damp on it that during the winter, the water from the cracked ceiling, because our house was so bad, would fall on top of you. So you wake up absolutely drenched. It's things like that we can change. If we have our money, we can build a better NHS. And I'm not making any argument that the NHS isn't good just now. I've got chronic illness. I love the NHS. I'm the biggest supporter. Without that, we're gone. But that's why it's so important to keep it free at the point of need, to keep the values that everybody holds in Scotland. The majority of people want to see universal collective policies, but New Labour aren't going to get you that. New Labour red Tories. New Labour dragged men and women into war. New Labour supported welfare cuts, and people like Anna Saward didn't even turn up to vote against the bedroom tax. Now, I've done mods in history, so I think I'm a bit of an expert on old Labour now. But that to me is socialism. Socialism is about equality. It's about building the best and possible country that we can. And the only way we do that is through independence, because it's time that we start taking it into our own hands and we start tearing down food banks and building up people, and we start realising that the people are something. We're not just a statistic, we're not just an asset. People make a country, and this campaign isn't going to be won by politicians. It's not going to be won by people standing up and preaching to you. It's not going to be won by Alex Salmon, Nicola Sturgeon, Alistair Darling. It's not going to be won by anyone. It's going to be won by you. Because an independent Scotland will be a Scotland for the people, by the people. It will be a democracy where the people are always represented. Is it not just the most ridiculous thing to think in your head? That people that we're given a vote that we don't even count? Is that democracy? Is that democracy when 5.5 million people could never have changed, and not a region, a full country, could never have changed the outcome of a Westminster government? Is it not shocking that we couldn't stop our people being challenged for things like further austerity and further welfare reform? Is it not shocking that we have no power over supporting children that grew up in terrible housing And I speak from experience here. They grew up with a single mother that worked in the national minimum wage instead of the living wage, because our country is so terrible that it doesn't value people enough to pay them enough to eat. Is it not shocking that we have no power over protecting our people, no power over protecting our children? Everybody says independence is full of uncertainties. Independence is full of possibilities and opportunities, because the people that will mould this country is you. This isn't a case of statistics, of economic arguments. This is a case of people standing up and realising that the best people to run Scotland is the people of Scotland. Independence isn't about the salt tire or passports. It's not about singing nationalist songs. I'm not a nationalist. I'm not a member of the SNP. I'm a member of the world, a member of the community that respects people, a member of being a people person, a member of being a human being that decided that treating human beings with humanity was the best way to run a country. But the only way we do that is if we stand up and we realise that we deserve this. Not that we want it, but we need it and we deserve it. I don't want another generation to grow up being let down. I don't want another generation to grow up not being certain about their future. I don't want another generation to grow up in a UK union that has been one of the worst things that's ever happened to our people. I don't want another generation to grow up in that. But the only way we do that is through independence. This is a story of the people. This is a case for the people. And the only way we win this, and the only way we get it to represent the people, is by the people. And that's why I would like you to vote yes, we need